The winner is Julie Andrews.
Thank you very much for this lovely honor.
She enchanted the audience and won Oscars. The Globe, yet beneath Julie Andrews' flawless she kept her smile a nasty secret for 60 years. Years ago, the startling incident started on a film that takes place in She and He Were Married in 1965. They had explosive chemistry when rumors circulated regarding their hidden hotel. Discussions, studio executives vowed to eliminate them both. Julie opted for silence. The Sound of Music star. Up until this point the illicit romance is ultimately revealed. That cost Julie Andrews everything. Was born in a modest English town in 1935. On Thames, Walton was called, yet even as her life was already complicated, baby. Barbara, the mother, had an affair with a Julie and a family friend were the outcome. Julie thought someone else for years was her dad, and she just learned the fact that remained hidden at the age of 15 till she revealed it to the public. Herself in her decades-long autobiography later, when the Second World War started, her parents' separation caused her life to fall apart. And finally got married again. Julie relocated, occasionally residing with her in real life, occasionally with her mother and new Ted Andrews, her stepfather, lives with her. Being a drinker, the stepfather wasn't easy. And, worse, went too far. Julie had to shut the door to her bedroom in order to defend herself because they were poor. Struggling to make ends meet in a part of London, she then stated that those war years were some of her life's darkest moments, but even in there was one bright point in that disaster. Speak to her stepfather, in spite of his issues, observed that she was talented and set up singing classes for her, which is during her encounter with Madame Lillian Stiles Allen. Julie, a well-known vocal teacher, referred to her as a madam, the third mother, saw anything unusual. Julie has a remarkable singing range, and Julie's crystal-clear tone didn't believe her. Was her voice unique, she joked? That her loudest voice was only audible to dogs. Remarks, but some were astounded by her training. Challenging to balance music classes and school, getting ready for a life with few children her age might envision Julie's very first actual she performed with her parents. Stood on a beer crate at the age of 10 to get to the microphone and join her in singing. Mom playing the piano and her stepfather shortly she was performing for the traveling soldiers. Even sleeping in bags and traveling by rail racks with Petula, another kid star. When Clark was 12 years old, everything changed. She met a man through her stepfather who operated some of the largest theaters in London. Offered her a shot, and Julie accepted it. Made their professional debut at the London Hippodrome, where she performed a French opera performance in front of a large audience. She was only a young child, yet the presentation was interrupted by a performance. When that one night turned, the audience went crazy. She even performed a skit during a year-long employment with a comic who makes balloons named She would run on stage at Wally Boa and tell him she's capable of singing, and then, wow, audience, she became the youngest at the age of 13. The only solo artist to ever play at the Royal A variety show before the King, and from then, Queen, things proceeded quickly. Was on the radio before becoming familiar with TV. Voice throughout Britain. She participated in kid-friendly productions such as Jack and the Cinderella and Beanstalk, and by the time she had her own when she was a teenager. Seeing Julie's debut movie wasn't a blockbuster, the voice part was in, and The Singing Princess is an Italian cartoon, but it was the beginning of something. Julie Andrews, who was bigger, had just turned 19. When she took the stage on Broadway September 30th was the first time. 1954, and she was cast as the main character of Polly Brown from the musical The It Wasn't Just Any debut, Buddy. Was an incident that changed her life. she had been suggested for the role by British Julie, an actress, and Hattie Jacques always grateful for providing her with that initial real shot, but accepting the position wasn't simple. Julie was forced to leave her English family. And she was afraid that she was the one behind one providing them with financial help, and now uncertain, she was flying around the world. If she were to succeed at all, her father would urge her to go, and that one option would completely alter her performance. Was a success, and her audiences adored her. Were astounded by her obvious strength. Voice and the show's flawless comedic timing ran 485 times, and Julie came out on top. For her debut, the Theatre World Award, however, the true reward wasn't only the applause, it was the person who, with two prominent Broadway producers Alan Frederick Lowe and Jay Lerner, were in the demographic they were selecting for their new Demonstrate My Fair Lady, and they had just by March, they discovered their Eliza Doolittle. Julie was 20 years old and no longer she was a star as a rookie, as Eliza. Rex Harrison's opposite, Doolittle, in My not only was Fair Lady significant, but it was the part played by the change from Cockney Julie was given by the flower girl to the polished lady. An opportunity to showcase her acting skills, and people took notice of the show, and her voice was so successful that it remained on Broadway. Years, and the recording of the cast was everywhere on household radios, even on the charts following her victory in New York. She introduced the same enchantment to the west of London. By 1958, her voice could go 4 miles. Octave's skill transcended oceans. She then made a comeback to Broadway in 1960. Once more, this time in Camelot as Queen Gwi. She was Richard Burton's co-star. A Welsh performer who captivated the audience. Things get a little complicated off stage. Later, Julie acknowledged that she had a strong appeal to Burton. He was endearing, captivating, and she found herself captivated to him although he maintained a professional demeanor. When he eventually approached, Julie startled everyone, particularly herself, by retaliating with the profanity Mary. Later on, she joked, "Poppins let fly," exposing him and ending the conversation. They maintained their enthusiasm on stage. However, it sizzled much more than show initially struggled, but eventually, shortly after a performance that was broadcast on, the viewers of The Ed Sullivan Show arrived, and the show lasted for 3 solid years. Ago, Burton received a Tony Julie Award. Another nomination, and a very watching Walt Disney was crucial. She was seen by Disney in Camelot and realized she was his Mary right away. But before that could occur, Poppins Julie was struck hard by something painful. Hollywood was producing a motion picture adaptation of All of Us assumed that My Fair Lady had appeared in it. She had brought fame to the part. Eliza Doolittle was her name, but Warner no, the brothers answered, they desired a larger. Audrey was given the part's name. Audrey was a gut punch to Hepburn. Already a well-known movie star, yet she unable to sing like Julie. In reality, the majority of someone else had to dubbed her music. Later on, singer Julie stated that if they'd requested that she perform for someone else's, she would have spat in their eyes with her voice. However, relinquishing that position allowed for Disney gave her Mary something greater. He saw her on stage in Camelot, Poppins. I hurried backstage to the meeting that evening. Julie believed that he was merely being courteous, but she informed him that she couldn't accept any additional roles while she was expecting a child. Grinned and replied, "It's all right, we'll hold on." He wasn't just being kind. Had been his ideal endeavor for many years. He assured his girls that he would create a movie that is inspired by their favorite novel, and he thought Julie was the only person who could do it. In fact, he rented a home in Los Angeles to stay with her relatives. When Mary Poppins debuted in 1964, there was the woman was truly expecting from a tiny English community to seize the world. She was 29, was a debut movie. Actress, and yet as soon as she appeared as the magical Anne on screen, the movie blew out and spectators were captivated. In the U.S., it earned more than $44 million. States as well as over $13 million globally the year after. The two at the Oscars, films competed against one another. Julie Andrews was smashed by Mary Poppins. Did not win Best Actress. Audrey Hepburn even received recognition in her speech. Julie expressed gratitude to the man who made this possible. Jack Warner's sly homage to the executive who had turned her down to the top. Mary Poppins earned more than I did. Even though it was far less expensive, Fair Lady Hollywood had discovered who in reality, Julie Andrews was. When The Sound was released in theaters in March 1965, didn't merely become popular, it blew up. Produced $286 million globally and made Julie Andrews becoming a world-renowned figure. She performed a vibrant young nun named Maria von Trapp who restores music to a mourning family's house where the first image of her on the mountaintop, spinning turned into one of the most well-known movie sequences history. But the enchantment behind the scenes that were captured on camera by a helicopter and the blade's wind continued to crash. She later joked that she had knocked her to the ground. After that, she was crushed into the grass. Each attempt to win 5 Oscars, including Finest Film produced by Andrews, the Golden Girl of Hollywood, but being 2 there was a cost to perfection, and she merely performed 2 adored nanny roles consecutively. And others were starting to claim that Julie knew she could only perform in musicals. Required to deviate from the norm, so later in 1964, she made a totally distinct genre of film. The Emily's Americanization was set during the Second World War and had a significant. She portrayed a British widow in a darker tone. For the first time, opposite James Garner she was acting, not singing, and she demonstrated her ability to do it next. Collaborated on Torn with Alfred Hitchcock. The Cold War spy thriller Curtain was released. She co-starred with Paul Newman in 1966. And Universal Pictures was relying on their celebrity, but Hitchcock wasn't. He was pleased that both actors were as well polished to achieve the desired rough tone. Despite conflicting reviews, audiences demonstrated regardless. The film earned more than $13 million on a budget of $3 million. It was a win, although it was a fragile one that year. Defeated Hawaii in a significant historical drama based on the book by James Michener. Its budget was the largest of any film. $15 million at the time, and in spite of heavy rain-related delays and even tidal wave warnings, which reached their peak, Julie played a part in the year's highest-grossing movie. Strong-willed individual who obeys her husband was a missionary to the islands. The performance was good, yet oddly the Jocelyn Laggard was given the spotlight as a total novice who performed a Hawaiian queen, who commanded attention and even took home the Golden Globe. Was a surprise of sorts. By the end of the 1960s, no one anticipated Julie. The magic began to fade in 1968. Featured in the theatrical biopic Star. The budget for actress Gertrude Lawrence was the director was the same man, which was tremendous. Behind everything, including The Sound of Music, appeared to be destined for success, yet the movie she was criticized by some commentators for being too theatrical. Variety wasn't restrained, claiming that her performance was too good. Heidenishness, the movie was a huge failure. Turned became one of the priciest decades. Failures, followed by Darling Lily in 1970 under her husband's direction. It was intended for Blake Edwards to reinvent her picture and swore on the screen. She performed. Audiences were astounded by the naked tease and not favorably. The film was expensive. Fortune of about $25 million and was unsuccessful at the box office. Saw again another enormous flop like that, which Hollywood failed to notice. Strangely, she is no longer a leading lady. Nonetheless, she was still awarded a Golden Globe Nominations for Darling and Star Lily, there was respect, but she required a reset because her momentum wasn't in 1972. She started watching TV with The Julie Andrews Hour is a packed variety show. Featuring humor, music, and ABC guest stars believed in her so strongly that they agreed to a 5-year contract with her. The show, reviewed by critics with great acclaim, appreciated her charm and adaptability, but favorable ratings did not equate to favorable reviews. The program battled against more powerful competition and was cancelled shortly after one season, followed by an odd occurred 1 month following the termination of the show was a big winner in the Emmys. There were 10 nominations, and it was bittersweet. A prize-winning program that no one observed that ABC awarded her further specials. To compensate, but it was obvious TV was also not her new residence, so she made with a daring move. She entered the nightlife scene. Yes, she is the singer who is most well known. Stood in hazy conditions with children in the Alps. Jazz music and jokes are played at clubs. Was a complete reimagining that she ridiculed jokes regarding her own image were made. Hollywood and shown that she wasn't merely a goody two-shoes. From critics of musicals adored it, and viewers were impressed. Revealed a new aspect of herself to the world. Sharp, humorous, and totally in charge than her big screen debut in 1979. Return, she starred in the romantic film 10. Blake Edwards directed the comedy, which was sensual, humorous, and quite modern. $74 million, demonstrating that Julie Andrews' star power remained intact. Followed it up with A Dark in 1981. Comedy in which she astounded everyone by being topless at the time wasn't accident, it was how she set herself on fire. Claiming a new image and a previous one, yet though the really pivotal moment occurred in 1982 within it, Victor Victoria played a poor vocalist who poses as a man posing as a lady in order to get the role in the nightclub gig was witty. It was bold and multi-layered, touching on gender, sexuality, identity, and survival, and the movie earned $28 million. Won her a second Golden Globe and Maria unexpectedly received an Oscar nomination. The job of Von Trapp was no longer the sole one. When they heard her, they thought what few people with the name Julie Andrews had done stars ever succeed in. She had reimagined herself several times, not just once, and she accomplished it without sacrificing what constituted she is first adored by everyone while her personal life flourished alongside her work. Become increasingly complex, Julie had married Tony Walton, a set designer, in 1959. Their relationship began back in he saw her perform for the first time as a child when they were little. They eventually became they were married while she was still a pen buddy. Performing in London's My Fair Lady in 1962 saw the birth of their daughter Emma. Was now juggling motherhood on Broadway. And a new marriage. The work wasn't simple. Kept them apart for months at a time. Occasionally, across continents, and as a mother while balancing celebrity Julie was ready for something that she stated that it drew her in the opposite direction. Her heart was divided in 2 directions. Her career, her child, and occasionally even when her child and her husband are together over the years, the pressure increased, and she remained silent at the moment. Suppressing feelings in order to continue eventually, the tension became excessive. Julie and Tony separated in 1969. Left Andrews feeling emotionally spent. Decided to seek therapy, a move that Mike Nichols, the director, transformed her life. Urged her to get assistance, and she found that listening therapy helped her cope with what she referred to as the trash and mess. It provided her with mental clarity and resilience to continue. Years later, she talked candidly about mental health in the hopes it was right that her tale would benefit others. Outside the office of a therapist that fate chose to make a change, which is where she encountered Blake Edwards, the director. Thereafter made a joke about how wonderful Hollywood moment, but that moment was actuality that they had both experienced heartbreak, were both subtly hurt, and each provided them with a certain sense of solace. Other in spite of the 13-year age gap. By 1969, everything suddenly snapped, and they were married, and their lives started to resemble a movie. She filled in for family dinners and sets. As a mother to his children, and subsequently Amy adopted 2 daughters from Vietnam. Joanna and I weren't merely partners at home, they collaborated at work as well. Collaborated on 7 films, including So with Victor Victoria. Certain movies didn't like Darling Lily, however, they never allow that to impact their connection. Andrews frequently remarked on Blake's sharpness. Her sense of humor counterbalanced her serious demeanor. They were married for 41 years, correct? Up to and including his passing in 2010, she kept calling their time after he went. A long but genuine love story together. There was another chapter before Blake. Less well-known but quite poignant back in. Julie starred in Camelot in 1960. Guinevere is playing opposite on Broadway. On stage, Richard Burton plays King Arthur. Offstage, their chemistry was electric. Was difficult at the moment. She was Tony. Walton and I are still married, but she cracks had begun to demonstrate that Burton was lovely, intense, and unachievable. Disregard Julie, who later acknowledged that her marriage was unstable, and she felt working directly with Burton alone day evoked emotions that she wasn't. She said that she was tempted to get pregnant. However, she never lost sight of her priorities. Remained focused on the task she was aware of. Stake, and despite the fact that the pull was strong, she put discipline before desire. That choice might have prevented her from the sound followed with even greater pain. Of music, Julie sang Maria in 1965. The Captain was performed by Christopher Plummer. They had a remarkable chemistry, and it wasn't merely performing in the background, they were secretly infatuated with one another. Both were experiencing hardships, and Julie's personal life was still bearing the burden of a troubled marriage. The Plummer was occupied with his own difficulties. It would have been simple for a romantic spark, but it wouldn't. Did the Plummer joke that they ought to have had a massive, disastrous affair, but life simply refused to let Julie have her children with something was still off with her timing. It resulted in an enduring friendship. According to Julie, they never dated, and perhaps that strengthened the bond. They held each other in the highest regard. Frequently commended him for establishing the music's ability to prevent it from becoming. Over the years, they have become overly sweet or foolish. Kept in constant contact and checked in on one another. Laughed together and helped each other out. As well as Plummer's death in 2021, according to Julie, they had stayed excellent pals as her lifelong companions in the 1980s. As her life changed, so did her career. Introduced fresh difficulties in That's Life. She portrayed a vocalist battling the role was near to the potential for cancer. To home because doctors at the time discovered a cut on her throat in the movie examined links with aging and the dread of. She starred in The Unknown that same year. Playing a well-known song in duet for one. The violinist has been diagnosed with several. The account of sclerosis was unvarnished and emotional. It also provided her with the opportunity to collaborate with Liam Neeson, whose passionate performance contributed to the movie's demise. She received a Golden Globe for both roles. Nominations demonstrating her superiority to Andrews. Was only a musical star by the 1990s. Investigated television and starred in 1992. Julie is seen playing a TV in the sitcom character who relocates to a small town upon his marriage to Blake, a veterinarian. The show was directed by Edwards, but it never discovered a following. It was cancelled. Only 7 episodes, despite the fact that the Andrews achieved success after a series of struggles. Julie Andrews, Somewhere, The sound of 5 Emmy Awards were earned by Christmas 1987 in She and Carol Burnett Got Back.